All right, for more now, let's bring in Benjamin Friedman. He's a foreign policy fellow and defense scholar at Defense Priorities. Hi, Benjamin.
Hi.
So I want to get your thoughts on what the president is saying with all of this. Play a clip here real quick of his phone call yesterday with Pete Hegseth. Listen here.
ISIS was all over the place when I took over. It was a total mess in Syria. We've almost eradicated all of them. We think all of them will be gone by the time we get out, but we're heading back and we're also fighting. You can do two things at once.
The president says we've almost eradicated them, but he's also said we've won. So what is it? Or could it be both, as one of our guests last hour believes?
Well, I think that we're about as close to victory against ISIS as we can reasonably be. I don't think it's possible to have them completely eliminated to the extent that no one in Syria supports ISIS or does something in its name. But even when we go, there's plenty of other people in Syria, starting with the Assad regime, who are also not big fans of ISIS and will go after them.
And that's the criticism here, right? That there will essentially be a vacuum left unfilled that the U.S. created. Republicans were very critical of President Obama getting out of the Middle East, and now many, including Republicans, are saying, well, why are we getting out of this very volatile region?
Well, I think getting out of that very volatile region is an excellent idea. I think if you look at the last 15 years of U.S. foreign policy with occupational forces in that region, it has not been a happy one, not a happy history. So I think that's the right direction to go. I do think the 4 months, the extension, helps us cut a deal or push for a deal between the Kurds and the Assad regime, which the Kurds want, that would allow them to be defended basically from the Turks and also keep down ISIS.
No worries, though, on your end of potentially handing this over to Russia to deal with inside Syria?
Well, I don't think it's a big favor to Russia to give them a civil war to manage. So I think, there are concerns about the way Russia will handle things. But I think it's a better deal for the United States not to be there in the middle of a sectarian civil war in the end of the day.
You mentioned the possibility of a 4-month withdrawal. I want to play for you some sound here. Lindsey Graham, Senator, South Carolina, was one of the biggest critics of the president's decision earlier this month when he announced the troops would be coming home. But there was a bit of a reversal over the weekend. Watch here.
The one thing I can assure everybody, that the Kurds are at risk. Our American personnel on the ground, aid workers and diplomats are at risk. We're going to be seen as having abandoned an ally. Good luck getting somebody to help you fight this war in the future. Iran's going to be really happy.
And he told me some things I didn't know that make me feel a lot better about where we're headed in Syria. He promised to destroy ISIS. He's going to keep that promise. We're not there yet, but as I said today, we're inside the 10-yard line.
What do you think made Lindsey Graham feel a lot better that he heard inside that meeting with President Trump?
Maybe it's just the 4-month extension of the troop presence, but I really don't know. Senator Graham has a bit of a history of going back and forth on his relationship with Trump, and I think he's really changed sort of the manner of his message more than his actual position, which is he still supports the war, as he always does, Senator Graham. So I think it's not a huge deal, really, what Senator Graham says about this.
Is the 4 months long enough, though? I mean, to get potentially 2,000 troops out of there and get them out of there safely, is that timetable long enough?
I believe it is. The military commanders have said they could do it in a few months, and I think really they could do it faster than that if they had to. I think we also need to be aware that there are considerable risks of having them there. There's a risk of getting into a fight with Russians. We were told by our envoy to Syria that we've had firefights with Russian forces more than once. That's very concerning. It could lead to a horrible escalation. We don't want to get into a war with Iran either. Certainly I don't. So I think getting those forces out of there has big benefits for our safety.
You mentioned Russia, so let me turn your attention to a story that has been developing over the last few hours into the last few days here. As an American citizen believed to be Paul Whelan, detained inside Russia. His brother, David Whelan, says that he was simply there in Russia, in Moscow, for a wedding. The Russians say that he was essentially a spy, and now he faces upward of a decade potentially behind bars in Russia. What is going on here? What is your read?
Well, it's hard to say intelligent things about it given the lack of information. There is speculation in the press, of course, that he has been detained as retaliation or bargaining chip because of Maria Butina, who was just or is about to be sentenced for after she did a plea deal for her espionage work in the United States on behalf of Russia. So maybe that's what's going on, but we really don't know. This gentleman, Whelan, was traveling to Russia a lot. He was a Russia-phile, somebody who really was interested in the country and spent a lot of time there. So it's just hard to know what the truth is of these allegations. And of course, we can't really trust the Russian legal process.
Yeah, Vladimir Putin the other day was basically said that Russia doesn't do an eye for an eye as it relates to law enforcement. Are we to believe him?
No, I don't think we should believe what he says on its face. But it also may be the case that it is unrelated and that possibly it's not as if Russia's run in a perfect way where every bureaucracy knows what the other bureaucracies are doing. So there might be some confusion on Putin's behalf, but it's just really hard to say right now given the lack of information about the charges in the case.
Yeah, a lot of questions here, and we will certainly continue to monitor what is going on with believed to be Paul Whelan held in Moscow. Benjamin Friedman, thank you for joining us on this New Year's Day. Appreciate it.
Thanks.